Listen, there is a moon orbiting Saturn. It has an atmosphere, a thick one, denser than Earth's, nitrogen-dominated, 1.5 bars of surface pressure. It has weather, it has rivers, it has lakes, it has seasons that last 7 years. On paper, it sounds familiar. That is the first lie. The moon is called Titan, and Titan is not familiar. Titan is a mirror held up to Earth at a distance of 1.2 billion kilometers, and the reflection is wrong, subtly, systematically, catastrophically wrong. The kind of wrong that doesn't reveal itself until you are already inside it. We are going to go inside it now. First, the atmosphere. Titan's atmosphere is 95% nitrogen. Earth's is 78% nitrogen. The symmetry is almost elegant. It is also irrelevant, because the remaining percentages diverge into different biological universes. On Earth, the remainder is oxygen and argon, the chemistry of combustion, of respiration, of life as we have built it. On Titan, the remainder is methane, hydrogen, and trace organics, complex ones, tholins, prebiotic compounds that form when ultraviolet radiation strikes methane and nitrogen, life's precursors, without life. That distinction is important. Titan has the ingredients arranged on the counter. The oven does not work. The oven is the temperature. The oven is the complete and total absence of liquid water. The oven is the minus 180 degrees Celsius ambient temperature that takes every familiar chemistry and arrests it, suspends it, freezes it into geological patience. The pressure of 1.5 bars is frequently cited as a selling point, and it is, structurally, a minor convenience. It means that a habitat on Titan does not need to withstand the crushing differential of deep space. It means a pressure suit on Titan is primarily a thermal suit. You would not be imploded by vacuum. You would simply be frozen, slowly, thoroughly, at a temperature where dry ice, carbon dioxide, the thing we exhale as waste, is a liquid. That is the environment. Not hostile in the cinematic sense, not explosive decompression or radiation storms. Hostile in the quiet, methodical sense. The hostility of a universe that optimized for physics and did not consult biology. The illusion of safety on Titan is not an accident of perception. It is a structural feature of the data. When you read the numbers, atmospheric pressure near Earth normal, dense sky, surface rivers and lakes, complex organic chemistry, the pattern recognition machinery of the human brain assembles a familiar template: habitable, terraformable, survivable. The brain is wrong. The brain evolved on a world with liquid water, molecular oxygen, and a surface temperature ranging between approximately -88 and +57 degrees Celsius. It has no template for Titan. It borrows the closest available one. It borrows Earth. That borrowing will kill you. We now perform the autopsy of the hydrological system. On Earth, water evaporates, it rises, it condenses, it falls, it fills rivers, lakes, oceans, it erodes rock, it transports sediment. It is the medium through which geology and biology negotiate. On Titan, the exact same process operates, with one substitution. The molecule is not water. The molecule is methane. Methane on Titan behaves as water does on Earth because Titan's temperature places methane precisely at its own triple point, the thermodynamic condition where a substance transitions fluidly between solid, liquid, and gas phases. At -180 degrees Celsius, methane evaporates from lakes, rises through a nitrogen atmosphere, condenses into clouds, and falls as rain. Methane rain, onto methane rivers, into methane lakes. The Ligeia Mare, the Kraken Mare, the Punga Mare. These are the named seas of the northern polar region. Kraken Mare alone spans approximately 400,000 square kilometers, larger than the Caspian Sea, filled not with saline water, but with liquid methane and ethane, a hydrocarbon solution at cryogenic temperature. You could theoretically sail it. You would not survive the attempt, but the sailing infrastructure would hold. The rivers of Titan are visible in radar imaging. The Cassini spacecraft mapped them, long, sinuous channels carved into the water-ice bedrock, because on Titan, the bedrock is water ice, frozen to the hardness of granite at -180 degrees Celsius. Water here is a mineral. Water is what granite is on Earth, the structural substrate that everything else sits on top of. This is the inversion. On Earth, water is the fluid, rock is the solid. On Titan, water is the rock, methane is the fluid. The cycle that on Earth supports carbon-based biochemistry here supports nothing. The lakes are sterile, the rain is sterile. The rivers carve channels in frozen water without depositing or sustaining a single organism that we have detected. The organic chemistry on Titan's surface is, by some analyses, extraordinarily complex. Tholins, the reddish-brown polymers produced by radiation chemistry in the upper atmosphere, blanket the surface. They are sometimes described as the building blocks of life. This description is technically accurate in the way describing iron ore as the building block of a bicycle is technically accurate. The gap between building block and functional structure is where all the work lives. The work requires liquid water. Liquid water requires heat. Heat is what Titan does not have. Titan's surface receives approximately 1% of the solar energy that Earth receives. The sun from Titan is a bright star, not a warm one. The organic chemistry sits on the surface, preserved, inert, patient. A hydrocarbon tomb with excellent organizational systems. Now we address the physics of -180 degrees Celsius, systematically. The number is not simply cold. Cold is a colloquial concept. -180 degrees Celsius is a material science boundary. It is the temperature at which the physical properties of most substances used in human engineering change category. They do not merely behave differently, they become different classes of material. Begin with polymers, rubber, plastics, synthetic seals, gaskets, O-rings, insulation coatings. These are the connective tissue of human engineering. They function because their polymer chains have mobility. At low temperatures, that mobility is arrested. The glass transition temperature, the point at which an amorphous polymer shifts from pliable to brittle, for most common rubbers and plastics, falls between -40 and -100 degrees Celsius. Titan's surface temperature is -180 degrees Celsius. Every rubber seal becomes ceramic. Every plastic component becomes a failure point. Every O-ring, every insulating gasket, every flexible joint in a spacesuit or habitat becomes a structural liability the moment it is exposed to the ambient environment. This is not a solvable problem with existing materials. It is a fundamental property of polymer chemistry. Metals are more resistant, but not immune. Cryogenic embrittlement in steel and many standard alloys is well documented. Carbon steel becomes brittle at temperatures below approximately -100 degrees Celsius. The material does not visibly degrade, it does not corrode, it simply loses its tolerance for impact stress. Under sudden mechanical load, a dropped tool, a footstep, a vibration from machinery, a component that would absorb the impact at room temperature instead fractures. The solution is to use specialized alloys, austenitic stainless steels, certain aluminum alloys, titanium. These maintain ductility at cryogenic temperatures. They exist. They are expensive. They require precise manufacturing processes, and they still operate at the limits of their specified tolerances at -180 degrees Celsius. Every single structural component of a Titan habitat must be engineered from materials selected for cryogenic performance. Every fastener, every bracket, every structural beam, every window frame. The engineering margin for error is narrow and non-negotiable. Now address the biology. The human body's operating range is approximately 35 to 41 degrees Celsius internal temperature. Below 35 degrees Celsius, hypothermia. Below 28 degrees Celsius, cardiac arrhythmia. Below 20 degrees Celsius, death is statistically certain without intervention. The ambient temperature of Titan's surface is -180 degrees Celsius. Biological brittleness is not a metaphor. Cellular membranes at cryogenic temperatures cease to function as semi-permeable barriers and become rigid, non-selective walls. Ion transport stops. ATP synthesis stops. Neural signaling stops. The cascade from exposure to cellular death at -180 degrees Celsius is not gradual. It is immediate. Human tissue exposed to Titan's ambient temperature would not freeze slowly in the way that polar explorers experience hypothermia. It would undergo rapid cryogenic fixation, the same process used in biological research to preserve tissue samples for microscopy. You would be preserved perfectly, immediately, permanently. The body as artifact. Suit systems mitigate this. Thermal insulation, internal heating, regulated atmospheric composition. But every watt of heat generated inside a suit on Titan is a watt that had to be produced, transported 1.2 billion kilometers, and consumed against a thermal gradient of approximately 200 degrees Celsius between the suit interior and the environment. The thermodynamic dead end is not the temperature itself. It is the energy cost of maintaining a biological system against that temperature indefinitely, with no local thermal resources. Saturn is very far away from the Sun. That distance is not incidental. It is the core constraint from which all other constraints derive. We arrive at the central paradox. Titan is, by hydrocarbon volume, one of the wealthiest bodies in the solar system. The Legion Rare alone contains more liquid hydrocarbons than all of Earth's proven oil and gas reserves. The surface is covered in organic compounds. The atmosphere contains methane. The lakes contain ethane. The sediment contains tholins. Fuel. Everywhere. In abundance. Inexhaustible. You cannot burn any of it. Combustion requires an oxidizer. On Earth, that oxidizer is atmospheric oxygen, 21% of the air, freely available, continuously replenished by photosynthetic biology. Combustion chemistry combines a fuel with oxygen to produce heat, carbon dioxide, and water. The oxygen is the critical reactant. Titan's atmosphere contains no free oxygen, zero. The hydrocarbons on Titan's surface are like a library in a language you cannot read. The information, the energy, is there. The decoding mechanism, oxygen, is not. You are surrounded by energy you cannot access through any of the combustion processes that human civilization is built upon. Every joule of energy on Titan must therefore come from one of three sources: nuclear fission or fusion, imported chemical oxidizers from off-world, or solar power operating at 1% of Earth's solar flux filtered through an atmosphere that further attenuates the already minimal incoming radiation. This is the oxygen tax. It is not a one-time payment. It is not a startup cost. It is a perpetual, non-negotiable levy on every biological and industrial process that requires combustion or respiration. Human respiration is combustion. You inhale oxygen. You combust glucose. You exhale carbon dioxide. Every breath a Titan colonist takes consumes oxygen that must be produced through electrolysis of imported water ice, recycled through closed-loop life support systems with non-zero loss rates, or carried as compressed gas from a resupply mission departing Earth with a transit time measured in years. The supply chain for air. Not metaphorically, literally. The supply chain for the molecules that keep human cells performing their cryogenic temperature-resistant, biologically fragile functions. Closed-loop life support systems exist. They operate on the International Space Station. The Sabatier reaction, the electrolysis of water, the recycling of carbon dioxide, these systems work. They also fail. They require maintenance. They require replacement components. Every component that fails on the International Space Station is 4 to 6 hours from a resupply mission launch at minimum. On Titan, the resupply cadence is measured in years. The Hohmann transfer window between Earth and Saturn repeats approximately every 12 months and requires a transit time of 6 to 8 years with current propulsion technology. Your oxygen recycler fails. Your backup fails. Your emergency reserve is 48 hours. The resupply ship is 6 years away. This is the oxygen-deprived wealth of Titan. Rich in everything that does not sustain you, deficient in the one molecule that does. Titan's surface gravity is 1.352 meters per second squared, approximately 14% of Earth's gravity, 0.14 g. This number is frequently presented as an advantage. Dense atmosphere plus low gravity equals human flight with minimal energy expenditure. The colonist as aviator, the colonist with wings, the colonist with dissolving bones. The human skeleton is a dynamic structure. It is not static hardware. It continuously remodels itself in response to mechanical loading. Osteoblasts deposit new bone. Osteoclasts resorb old bone. The balance between these processes is regulated in part by the mechanical stress imposed by gravity and physical activity. Remove the stress, tip the balance. In microgravity environments, the International Space Station again, bone mineral density decreases at approximately 1 to 2% per month in weight-bearing bones. Countermeasures exist: resistance exercise, pharmacological interventions. They mitigate, they do not eliminate. Long-duration astronauts return to Earth with structurally compromised skeletal systems that require months of rehabilitation. Titan is not microgravity. It is low gravity, 0.14 g. The degradation would be slower than on the ISS, and it would never stop, because there is no return. There is no rehabilitation under Earth's gravity. The colonist's bones would reach an equilibrium density appropriate for 0.14 g, and if that colonist ever attempted to return to Earth, if the mission profile even allowed for return, 1 g would be lethal. The gravity trap is not metaphorical, it is architectural. There is a second component. Muscle atrophy follows the same mechano-regulatory logic as bone. The cardiovascular system, which evolved to pump blood vertically against 1 g, undergoes fluid redistribution in low gravity. Intracranial pressure increases, intraocular pressure increases, visual acuity decreases. Astronauts develop what is informally called space blindness, structural changes to the optic nerve and eyeball shape caused by chronic fluid redistribution. The threshold duration for irreversible changes is not definitively established. On Titan colony, the duration is a lifetime. The thick, orange-tinted atmosphere of Titan would not compensate for the biological consequences of 0.14 G. The body does not measure atmospheric pressure with its mechanoreceptors. It measures load, it measures compression, it measures the force with which your feet hit the floor when you walk. At 0.14 G, that force is 86% below what evolution calibrated the human skeleton to experience. Over decades, the calculus is simple. The skeleton that enters Titan at 30 years old does not belong to the same body at 60, not structurally, not functionally. The slow dissolution of human bone structure in a thick orange-tinted fog, that is not a metaphor, that is the timeline. There is a phenomenon in clinical psychology called sensory deprivation. Reduce external stimulation below a threshold. Eliminate visual input, auditory input, vestibular feedback, and the human brain begins to generate its own hallucinations, paranoia, dissociation. The brain is not designed for silence. It interprets silence as malfunction and compensates with manufactured signal. Titan is not silent, but it is monotone. The tholin haze. Tholins are complex organic polymers produced when ultraviolet radiation processes methane and nitrogen in Titan's upper atmosphere. They are the reason Titan appears orange in photographs. They precipitate through the atmosphere, coat the surface, tint the sky. The haze exists at multiple atmospheric levels and scatters light across the spectrum in a way that reduces surface illumination and shifts the visible color range toward the reddish-brown. Standing on Titan's surface under the tholin haze, the ambient light level is approximately 1,000 times less than on Earth's surface under direct sunlight, comparable to overcast twilight on Earth. Not darkness, there is light, but perpetual, unwavering, orange-tinted twilight. Every day, every hour, for every year of every human lifetime spent on Titan. The sun is not visible from Titan's surface as a disk. It is a bright point in an orange sky. Saturn, which should dominate the sky of any moon in the Saturnian system, is invisible from Titan's surface. The tholin haze has atmospheric opacity sufficient to block direct observation of Saturn entirely under most conditions. You orbit Saturn, you live your life in Saturn's gravitational field, you will never see it. This is the atmospheric opacity as psychological variable. Human circadian rhythm is regulated by light, specifically by the intensity and spectral composition of light processed by intrinsically photoreceptive retinal ganglion cells, a separate photoreceptive pathway from vision dedicated to biological clock calibration. These cells are tuned to blue wavelength light. The tholin haze filters blue. The residual light on Titan's surface is spectrally shifted away from the wavelengths that regulate circadian function. Artificial lighting can compensate. Full-spectrum blue-weighted lighting in habitats can maintain circadian function in the way that SAD lamps function in polar winter. The colonist lives under artificial light designed to simulate the sun of a world they can no longer reach. The simulation of sunlight as a survival system. The psychological cost of this environment is not hypothetical. We have evidence sets from analogous conditions. Polar research stations, Concordia, Vostok, the winter overpopulations of Antarctic outposts, provide data on human psychological response to prolonged isolation, sensory uniformity, and sunlight deprivation. The documented effects include depression, cognitive slowing, sleep disruption, irritability, reduced motivation, interpersonal conflict amplification. These are managed through selection psychology, behavioral health support, finite deployment periods, and the knowledge that the sun will return. On Titan, the sun does not return. The sky does not change. The orange haze is the sky, permanently, for the operational lifetime of the colony, for the biological lifetime of the colonist. The orange-tinted sensory deprivation chamber is not a temporary condition, it is the address. We complete the autopsy. 7 acts, 7 systems, each one analyzed as a functional process, each one evaluated against the requirements for sustained human habitation. The verdict is the same in each case: insufficient. Titan has a nitrogen atmosphere. It is breathable as a pressure medium, but biologically inert and thermally insufficient. Net assessment: partial utility, full dependence on imported life support. Titan has a hydrological cycle. The working fluid is cryogenic methane. It is non-toxic, structurally interesting, and completely incompatible with carbon-based biochemistry as we practice it. Net assessment: geologically functional, biologically irrelevant. Titan has a surface temperature of -180 degrees Celsius. This temperature lies below the glass transition temperature of most engineering polymers, below the ductile to brittle transition of many standard alloys, and approximately 220 degrees below the lower operational limit of the human body. Net assessment: material science emergency requiring full-spectrum engineering solutions for every exposed component. Titan has abundant hydrocarbons and 0 atmospheric oxygen. The energy is present, the oxidizer is absent. Every energetic process, combustion, respiration, industrial chemistry, requires imported or electrolytically generated oxygen against an energy budget constrained by 1% solar flux and the absence of local thermal resources. Net assessment: thermodynamic dead end for oxygen-dependent civilization. Titan has 0.14 g surface gravity within a dense atmosphere. The gravity is insufficient to maintain human skeletal and cardiovascular physiology within operational parameters over multi-year timescales. Departure creates a one-way biological adaptation that forecloses return. Net assessment: the gravity trap closes on first landing. Titan has perpetual tholin haze. The visible sky is uniform orange-brown at illumination levels equivalent to deep twilight. The Saturn is invisible. The sun is a point source. Blue spectrum light is attenuated below circadian regulation thresholds. Net assessment: chronic psychological attrition requiring continuous countermeasures with no natural amelioration. The synthesis: Titan is not a failed candidate for colonization. It is a precise illustration of what colonization failure looks like at the systems level. Not a single catastrophic disqualification. 6 simultaneous, intersecting, mutually reinforcing deficiencies. Each one manageable in isolation, given sufficient engineering resources. Together, they compose a total environment that imposes an energy and logistical cost on human habitation that exceeds any conceivable benefit from the location. What does Titan offer a human civilization that cannot be obtained elsewhere with less expenditure? The hydrocarbon lakes have no utility without oxidizer. The organic chemistry has no near-term biological application. The atmospheric pressure is a minor structural convenience that does not offset any other factor. The low gravity makes extended aerial locomotion possible. This is not sufficient justification for the infrastructure required to keep a human body functional in that environment for a decade. Titan is not a backup Earth. It is a cryogenic storage unit that happens to be shaped like a world. The narrative of outer solar system colonization carries a specific cultural load. It is the narrative of expansion, of persistence, of the species that refuse to stay contained. It is compelling. It is also, from a material science and biology perspective, a wishful projection of capabilities that do not currently exist onto a destination that does not accommodate the capabilities that do. Titan does not care about the narrative. Titan is minus 180 degrees Celsius. Titan is an orange sky. Titan is a hydrocarbon sea you cannot use, and a gravity field that will dismantle you slowly, and a supply chain for oxygen that runs 1.2 billion kilometers back to a world that is, by most forecasts, increasingly difficult to sustain on its own terms. The analysis does not recommend against studying Titan. The analysis does not recommend against robotic exploration of Titan. Titan's prebiotic chemistry is genuinely significant. The Dragonfly mission, NASA's rotorcraft lander, designed to traverse Titan's surface and sample organic chemistry, is a rational investment. Instruments are not fragile. Instruments do not have bone density. Instruments do not have bone density. The analysis recommends against Titan as a colonization destination on the grounds that the resource expenditure required to maintain a human population there exceeds the expected return for the foreseeable technological horizon, and does so across every relevant domain simultaneously. This is Gideon, Black Box. The subject was Titan. The finding, a cryogenic mirage, a mirror world with a broken reflection, an oxygen-deprived wealth surrounded by a hydrocarbon tomb, maintained at thermodynamic equilibrium by a universe that does not negotiate. The session is complete. The temperature on Titan's surface is minus 180 degrees Celsius. It will be minus 180 degrees Celsius tomorrow. It will be minus 180 degrees Celsius when you finish listening to this. Physics does not adjust for the audience.